Hello and welcome to The Advice Show, the show for bringing you general advice, ideas and thoughts on a range of subjects. Today I am joined by Abigail Eaton-Masters, a Manchester psychotherapist. We are going to talk about how to help young people through bereavement. If you have any questions for us today, you can get in touch with the show by tweeting us at That's Manchester using the hashtag MCRAdvice, or text advice and your message to 07548 200 007. Abigail, welcome to the show. So just quickly, briefly, explain what you do in yourself and such.
Yes, well, a psychotherapist is someone who helps another person through any problems that they've got going on in their lives. So, for instance, maybe you're going through a relationship difficulty, a breakup, perhaps you've lost your job, or you've got something else going on. Perhaps it's self-harming, or you've got problems with alcohol, addiction, and also with school children as well, that they have a lot of stress going on. So maybe, entrance exams, maybe there's bullying going on. So we all need the time and the space to just let off steam and to have some tools to take forward that we can apply when we encounter these problems. And as a psychotherapist, it's my job to give them away. Okay,
and you help quite a lot of people out then?
Yeah, well, I've been doing it for about 10 years, so the numbers are in the thousands now. And I wouldn't do anything else.
Great stuff. And you're based in Manchester?
Yeah, I'm in Manchester, so I've been up this way for probably about 8-9 years.
Fantastic. Yes. Right, so today we're going to be talking about bereavement and young children. So just get straight back into it. Yes. How do children and young people experience bereavement differently to adults?
Yes. Oh gosh, we all think, don't we, that when we've lost a loved one, that we go through the bereavement process, and as upsetting as that is, we can identify what that looks like. So for instance, in an adult, we might go through, especially if it's somebody close to us, we might go through that whole denial stage, and then you go on to being really upset, and maybe even some anger, and eventually you go on to acceptance. And normally within the first year, it's quite an emotional process. But after the first anniversary, things start to improve. That as an adult you can see that, okay, things are getting better, and you can keep the memory of the person alive. Whereas a child, for instance, they have different stages. Like, for instance, up to 2 years old, they haven't got any idea of what death is. They just don't have that mental functioning. So for instance, for somebody who's under 2, they may notice that person isn't around anymore. They may ask, where are they? But they're okay. They're normally quite functioning. They don't necessarily get upset. But as soon as the child starts getting a bit older, they have more of a self-awareness about them. And then it starts to become apparent that person isn't in their lives anymore, especially if it's a parent. I mean, it's sad, but these things do happen. Somebody who's been a caregiver for a child and something that's not there, it's quite upsetting. So they may not have the emotional intelligence to verbalise, that they're really upset, that they're missing that person. So they may start acting out. So you may find that all of a sudden they're scared of the dark, or they don't like going to certain people, or that school is preferable to being at home, and lots of different things. The other thing for the child is that depending on the age specifically, they may think that the person is coming back. So in our culture, we often say, oh, Auntie Helen has gone to sleep with the angels, or the other person who's died, they've gone to heaven. Yeah. And these things, the child will think, oh, okay, they're going to wake up soon. Yeah. Or heaven is a place that they can come back from. They don't understand it's a permanent solution.
Right, okay. Can you prepare a young person then for a death?
Oh gosh, you can, and it does take patience from the caregiver. I mean, for instance, in our culture, we're not very good at talking about death. So for instance, you could, if the caregiver is ill and, unfortunately, it's terminal, then you can sit down to a child and explain that it is a permanent thing. I mean, if you could take a plant, for instance, you know, you sow a seed and you watch it grow, and over time that, you know, it does eventually die. And if you can sit the child down and talk in these terms, very straightforward, and make it natural, because, you know, normally we're quite devastated by the death of somebody close. But if we can put it in everyday language so that it's not a shameful or a taboo subject, and we're very open about our conversation, then the child will grasp that. And also you can do things to prepare the child as well, starting by maybe like a memory book or a memory box. You can start collecting photos of the times that you spend together, or even, you know, saving things, you know, like cinema tickets or napkins, you know, anything that would evoke a memory for the child, and they have it there to keep them safe. And another good thing for a child as well is anything that has your smell on. So if you are, you know, in a position that you're terminally ill, you know, perhaps you've got a favourite perfume or aftershave or something, you know, put it on a teddy or a handkerchief or something like that. And just keep that communication open, and don't try to hide anything, and that's a good process for a child.
Fantastic. How do you know if a child or a young person is grieving then?
Yeah,
that's a tricky one, I can imagine.
Well, you know, the obvious things, of course, are crying. You know, as adults we would cry, you know, when a loved one goes. But you may find that a child will perhaps get a teddy or a doll, and maybe they might start pulling the hair out or deface it in some way. Or as boys specifically, they might get toy cars and bash them together and, you know, be
quite destructive.
Yeah, quite destructive, because when children are angry, the parent or the caregiver normally said, oh, you need to be a good boy, you need to be a good girl. You know, tears and anger are really frowned upon in our society. But when a child is grieving, they're going to have all these internal feelings, and one, they want to be good for their parent or carer, and two, they don't know necessarily how to express it in an adult way. They don't have that emotional intelligence, so it would come out in, you know, things like anger mainly, or it may go the opposite way. They may withdraw into themselves, that they just haven't got any interest in doing anything. They may be very clingy to whoever is their carer, and it can go on within the home, but also within the school as well. So it's quite good to always let the school know what's going on. Absolutely.
Okay then. As a parent, teacher or carer, how much should we tell children about death?
Oh gosh, it's so important that they understand it very clearly, because, you know, rather than being ambiguous with the nature of death, is just in whatever language that they understand, you know, whatever is age appropriate rather, is letting them know. So for instance, you could go through the cycles of a plant, or you could look at the seasons of the weather, and there are all things in nature that are around us, and we can use them as examples. And also you can perhaps there was something on TV, or maybe there's a good book that there are books about bereavement. There's one called Frederick the Giraffe, who is about about Giraffe losing his dad, and that's quite a useful book as well. And it goes to show that no matter what you're going through, you know, that's okay. If you want to be angry, let it out. If you want to cry, that's okay as well. And normally it's the first year is the hardest, and you know, with time things can almost look back to normal.
Okay, great. Is it important to keep children away from funerals? I got a bit of a personal experience. Unfortunately, I've only experienced a close death in my family, which is my granddad, and that was many years ago when I was back at school, and I was actually away when he died on a holiday with a friend, and I don't remember, well, I have no memory of going to his funeral, so I was obviously kept away from the funeral.
Okay.
I've never asked my mum why that was. Is that going to be a case with a lot of people then? Sort of thing?
The thing with parents, we always want to protect our children, and we want to keep them away from bad things and sad things, and obviously a funeral being a very sad time, and usually the parent or the carer will want to protect the child from that. But I don't necessarily agree that's a good thing, because you know, they can see the process of the funeral, and also they can see where they're buried, or you know, where the ashes are scattered. And it also depends on, you know, what religious beliefs that you have as well. But if you keep the child informed and updated, being very truthful throughout, it's really beneficial for the child, because then they're part of that. Because like you yourself, you missed out on the funeral.
I do feel like I missed out. It would have been nice to have felt like I'd been there, and like I look back at it now thinking it would have been nice to have gone as well. Absolutely.
Well, it's all part of saying goodbye as well, because without being there at the funeral, it's where is the ending? You know, within all relationships in our lives, you know, we have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And when somebody dies, that's the end of a relationship. You know, whatever relationship that was that you had with them. And a funeral is a way of saying goodbye and being amongst people who are experiencing grief as well, because if this is the first funeral for a child, they may not know how to express grief. So if they're among adults who are being open about how upset they are, then they'll be set an example, basically, that it's okay to express grief in this way.
Okay, great stuff. Well, we're just coming to the end of the first half now, but we're going to talk more when we come back in the second half. But yes, unfortunately, that is all we've got time for in part one. But stay tuned, because after the break, we're going to continue talking to Abigail. See you in 3.